They came for her at dawn, boots on steel. Shadows stretched long across the shattered tiles of the old lunar theater. No one performed there anymore. Not since the collapse of the lunar circuits. Not since the wars. Not since the screams had faded into memory. But she remained center stage, framed in dust and light, a silhouette in stillness, her arms like silk threads, her legs poised like tension blades, her eyes fixed on nothing and everything. The seven were not ordinary. They were trained for void warfare, for atmosphere drop, for neural null combat. They had dissolved minds with whispers and broken skulls with thought. They had burned colonies and ended empires. They did not speak as they entered. One moved to flank, one moved to close, two hung back with rifles humming, ready to bring her down with zero delay charges. The last three waited because they had learned to wait, because seven trained killers never rushed. She lifted her left foot then, and the world forgot gravity for a moment. Her spin began slow, her foot traced the air. Her other leg folded, then extended her arms, pulled the dust into a spiral of history and sorrow. The killers blinked, the rifles began to fire, and yet nothing struck her, because nothing could, because the rhythm had changed, because she had begun the dance. She moved through them like a dream of something once beautiful and long gone, like the whisper of a planet's last breath. One rifle shattered in its owner's hand, metal peeling back like frightened petals. The wielder cried out, though the sound never reached her. She spun again, her heel touching nothing, her toe finding the beat of the silent song in her soul. The second rifle crumpled. The second shooter fell, knees folding back, body unraveling in a choreography of silence. The flankers closed in with blades with neurochains and poison thread. One made it close enough to see her eyes. And that was a mistake. Her eyes held galaxies. Her eyes held wars and forgiveness and the weight of dance. Passed through generations. He struck out, and she moved forward into the blow, her shoulder grazing his chest, her fingers brushing his cheek. And then he folded, as if gravity had found him again, but too fast, too strong, too late. The neurochains flew toward her, thin and bright like the nerves of gods. But she turned, she pirouetted, and the chains bent away as if embarrassed, as if ashamed. One sliced her sleeve, revealing skin that shimmered like frost in starlight. And the man who threw it stared long enough to forget his purpose. And in that forgetting she turned her leg like a scythe, her foot like a blade, and his breath left his body in a prayer of regret. Three remained, the waiting ones, the ones who understood now that she was not human, that she was not born of war, nor bred in labs, that she had not trained for violence, but for balance and grace and beauty, and that made her more dangerous than any weapon they had ever known. They looked at each other, spoke no words, and moved as one, drawing out gravity anchors, throwing them into the shattered ceiling, pulling the ground into spikes of warping mass, trying to collapse the air around her into pressure and force and math. But math could not hold her rhythm, could not measure her soul. She danced along the collapsing path, her feet never touching the spikes, her arms never brushing the air thick with killing intent. She leaped into the air, and the anchors screamed. One cracked as she twisted above it, the other pulled too hard and exploded in a burst of reversed inertia. The last man beneath it tried to run, but time had broken and his legs failed to find tomorrow. He fell in slow motion, his scream, a silent ribbon trailing behind him. The six tried to catch her as she landed, as she came down like a falling star, but she did not land. She spun mid-air, she hovered as if the moon itself held its breath, and then she kicked once, a single motion, and the sixth was gone. Thrown across the room, through the stone wall into the crater beyond, his body lost to the void, the sound of his fall still echoing somewhere past memory. The seventh. She knew she had seen her before, a woman tall and armored, with scars like medals on her throat, a survivor of the glass planets, a hunter of truths, a killer of dancers. Long ago, she had killed the last of the Earthborn ballerinas with a smile and a knife. But this one was not from Earth. This one was not from any place. The seventh knew this one came from the fracture between stars, where movement meant survival, where balance meant power. They circled each other, the last dancer and the last killer. No music, no breath, only the pulse of the universe in their veins. The killer moved first, fast, brutal, efficient. But the ballerina stepped through the attack with grace, her hands brushing the edges of violence, turning it away without force, without resistance, without hate. She did not need to win. She needed only to move, and the movement was enough. The killer grew angry, grew wild, her blows faster, her feet louder, her eyes full of war. She called on memories of battles, she called on names of gods, she called on old pains and louder sorrows, but none of it reached the dancer who floated just beyond her reach, who touched nothing and everything, who turned each scream into a note in the music only she could hear. Then the dancer stepped forward, and the fight ended, not with a strike, not with a wound, but with a touch soft and infinite, the kind of touch that breaks without shattering, that ends without killing. The killer froze, her arms limp, her eyes wide. She dropped to her knees, not from pain, but from the weight of silence, from the grief of understanding that beauty had undone her. The dancer stood above her, the dust around her now still, the air heavy again, the gravity hers to command, the silence hers to mold. The ghosts of the theater watched from cracked seats, from shadowed corners, from the echoes of applause, long dead. And one by one, the ghosts bowed, and the killer bowed too, not because she had lost, but because she had seen, and seeing was enough. The dancer turned, then stepped from the stage into the light of a moon that did not remember her name and never would. But the stars did. And they whispered it to each other in pirouettes and leaps, in the silence between pulses, in the rhythms of planets still unborn. Because once a dancer shattered gravity, and 7 trained killers went down dancing, and the universe itself had learned to hold its breath.